Hey, folks, it's another More Than a Refresh T3D sessions with Command Prompt CIO, Ildefonso. Ildefonso, before we get started, and I know it's a long story, but in 45 seconds or less, you are our longest team member, our longest standing team member. How long have you been with us?
Um, Almost 15 years, 15 years
Almost,
this December.
okay, almost 15 years. And I'm getting a little old, so sometimes my memory fades. But as I recall, you started out in Venezuela.
Yes,
And then you escaped that regime literally to Colombia.
correct.
And then you escaped. Well, I don't want to escape. Colombia's not terrible. But you continued to move down your migratory path and you ended up in Florida.
Yes.
And you have recently become an actual bona fide, not green card holder, which you were, but you are now an actual bona fide citizen. Yes.
Yes, I recently became a naturalized citizen.
So the reason I bring that up, folks, is because this is what immigration is about, and it's what companies should be doing. When you are supporting an immigrant, it shouldn't be on H-1B. It should be with a path to citizenship, because H-1B is essentially for companies that want to work you to death, and it's just not right. Now, my little political soapbox aside, Ildefonso, we are talking about why or when you should use the cloud. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically, it's a discussion I started with some of my teammates, and I just couldn't get it off of my mind. And it followed it to the program. So I was like, let's continue it.
Okay. Well, right before we got online or right on this recording, I was saying there's really only one reason to not use the cloud. And my reasoning was money. If you can afford to use the cloud, and obviously there's some technical limitations, so you have enough bandwidth, things like that. It really makes no sense for most people to not use the cloud. And you disagreed. You said that's not necessarily the case. So
Yes.
expound.
Well, and I have been pondering about it since I saw one big client of us sign a 10-year contract with Google for staying in the cloud. And when I saw the the size of their monthly bill in the cloud, even with the discounts Google gave them, and I saw the server sizes and all of that, I was like, come on, they could afford to buy all the servers and pay for renting a rack space or probably even building a small data center somewhere with the amount of money they paid in 2 or 3 years. In at the fourth, fifth year, they would be net positive in the investment. So I was a bit confused why they don't do that.
Well, I can actually answer
And
that. I know which client you're talking about, even though they didn't consult with me on that decision. From a business perspective, we're not talking about personal, we're just talking about business. While yes, you're correct, you can buy the hardware and you can rent it, and you'll save a ton of money. A perfect example: there's a case study right now out there, Hey.com. Hey.com is run by DHH, the inventor of Ruby on Rails. Okay, and he recently moved from Amazon Cloud to essentially on-prem, but a colo. Okay, and he's saving, I think it's millions of dollars a year. Okay, but the other side of this has to do with accounting. Very boring, but it's very real. If you buy hardware, you have to depreciate that hardware over a period of time. And I don't remember if it's 3 years or 5 years, but you don't get to take the entire cost of the hardware at once. If you rent a service, Google Cloud, Amazon Cloud, you get to deduct 100% of the costs of that every single month or every single year whenever you pay them. So from a business perspective, there is very much a reason. Further, as you know, because you and I have both been hardware monkeys when we were younger, you can get 50 machines and 20 of them are going to fail at some point, which means you do have to have a support contract. You do have to have SREs. You do have to pay for those SREs. You have to have replacement parts. And realistically, at the speed in which hardware moves, you're only getting 3 years out of that hardware, maybe 5. Because once you're no longer depreciating it, a business will buy up again. That's why leases are only like 3 years.
Yeah, that is something I was pondering about because as I was getting into some hobby with crypto mining some years ago, and
Sure.
for the first time, the government started to ask us to be mandatory to report
Hmm.
any cryptocurrency income. I forgot the year, maybe 2017, 2018. I forgot the year, but they did it at some point. They basically said if you receive any amount of money in crypto, you need to report it on your taxes. So
Well, let's be
I
very clear.
actually,
No matter what you're doing, the corporate is going to try, or the government will take your money. They are
yeah,
happy to take your money. They want to take your money. They do not want you to be free. Not any government on the planet. So yes, I thought it was funny when the crypto stuff came along because they're like, "Oh, we don't have to report it till we sell it," and da 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 da. I'm like, "Yeah, just wait. As soon as the government realizes they can make some money off of it, they're going to hit it," and they did.
and I did it. But the point is, back in the day, I started to study about the depreciation of hardware because I had some
Hmm.
hardware being used for mining, and I learned that it could actually depreciate it and deduct it from the taxes. Um,
Correct.
what I saw is that generally speaking, you just save the tax of the cost of the product. So if you spend $100 on a product and you fully depreciate it in the first year, which you could because it's less than $2,000, and there is a special rule for that. I forgot which one was it. At any rate, let's assume you depreciate those $100. You are just saving your tax rate
Hmm.
for that, your effective tax rates, which can be not actually the 20 because it comes after deductions and stuff. So it boils down to probably 10 to 20% maximum you're going to get back of it. So it's not like you're recovering 100% of the cost of the system.
Well, exactly. And that was my point about just using the cloud because, well, for example, I mean, with Google Cloud, well, Command Prompt uses Google Cloud. And I'm not going to say how much, but let's say we're spending $3,000 a month. That $3,000 a month is tax free. But
Correct.
if we host and we own that hardware, think about all the instances we have, all the services, all those types of things. Let's say we could probably pull that off with a couple of Postgres servers and a 4-node Ceph cluster, right? Well, that's $50,000 in hardware, and that $50,000, or maybe even $75,000 in hardware, we have to depreciate over 3 or 5 years. I'm not an accountant, so I don't remember the exact time. It's much better for us, especially as a small company, just to write that off every month. It's gone. It's just simpler.
Yeah. And of course, in the long term, you can make money or end up positive with this. So yes, we could think it could be money, but my first argument was precisely that one. I was like, yeah, but I mean, being a tinkerer and being someone who has actually deployed infrastructure on bare metal in the past, well, I know it can be done. I mean, you could deploy OpenStack. Yes, it
Mhm.
can be complex, but it does pretty much everything a cloud provider does for you. Um, but sometimes that's not the problem. Sometimes it's what you mentioned, compliance. And you maybe are a regulated industry and you will have to pay a lot more money each year to have your data center audited in order to be able to operate, whereas Amazon does that and provide it for you. Sometimes it is a matter of not having the know-how and not being able to find staff to manage this. So you
Well, the
decide,
staff
okay,
thing, I mean, the staff thing is huge, right? Because the moment you hire staff, first, you're going to get a support contract. We're going to hire a bunch of hardware. We're going to buy a bunch of hardware from Dell, and then we're going to buy the hardware support contract, which means they're going to be on site within 4 hours with the replacement parts or something goes down, as an example. So we got to pay for that. That's not that expensive because generally speaking, if you're buying quality parts, right? They don't die. It's the wear and tear stuff. And that's getting better, like with SSDs and NVMEs and stuff like that. But you still got to pay for an SRE. And if you're 24/7, you need at least two SREs, right? So now you're paying, whatever that salary is, plus the taxes on top of that salary, plus the benefits. And then you have to have more than two or three. You got to have four or five because you got to be able to give them vacation. You got to give them paternity leave. All of a sudden, you're spending $1.5 million a year. It's kind of the same cost, if not more, than you'd be paying in the cloud.
correct. And that was my point precisely because my first thought as a tinkerer was, yes, it's totally doable. You can do it and save a bunch of money. And then remembered, yes, I could do it myself, but I would need to live, I would need to eat, I would need to pay bills and stuff. So I cannot really do it myself. I need to have the time, and for that, I need to have income related to this. And then it turns out that maybe I prefer to outsource it to somewhere else and have someone else handle all of this.
Well, yeah, and I mean, some people are privacy fanatics or advocates, which I am, not nearly as bad as I probably should be. But the cloud is really, really good at a few things. Well, for example, hosting email. Nobody in their right mind should be hosting their own email. I don't care where you host it, but hosting your own email is just silly at this point.
Yeah.
Docs, in terms of word processing, things like that. I'm a huge fan of LibreOffice, but I don't use, and I have it installed for emergencies. But the reality is, I use Google Cloud, right? Google Docs, because it's just good at it. It does everything I need to do. There are things the cloud doesn't do well. As good as they like to be at databases, their
Yeah.
databases are a limiting factor. But with that, hey, and this has been another more than a refresh T3D sessions. Thank you, Ildefonso.